Sometimes we're tempted to believe that our success is dependent on what people think of us as well, and that's why we don't want to remain hidden. We feel like we need it to prove ourselves. But Jesus knew he didn't need to prove himself. He knew his success was not dependent on what people thought about him, but on obedience to God. He knew that if he was obeying God, then he was being successful in his mission, no matter what people thought and no matter the outcome. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today's video, we're talking about how God is keeping you concealed for a purpose until the time is right. We all go through seasons in our lives where it feels like God is keeping us hidden, where maybe you feel like God is keeping you unseen, unknown, kept in obscurity, and you might even be tempted to feel unimportant. But God has not forgotten you, and if God is keeping you concealed, one, it is for a purpose, and two, it is for a specific point in time. It's encouraging to know that even Jesus had a season where he was hidden before stepping into a more public ministry. And so in today's video, we're going to be looking at a story in John chapter 7, where Jesus explains to his disciples why he is remaining hidden until the time is right. And I think this story really exposes some of our fleshly motivations for wanting to be seen, known, and important that we really need to do some honest reflecting on. But this story also encourages us with the assurance that God has a good timing and a good purpose in all things. A good timing and a good purpose for keeping us hidden, and a good timing and a good purpose from when he brings us out of being hidden and into what he has for us next. Before we get into this video, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. I make Christian, faith, and lifestyle content aimed at encouraging you to know God more through his word and to grow in his likeness, and I would love to have you here. And then give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful or encouraging. God is keeping you concealed for a purpose until the time is right. Like I said, we're going to be looking at John chapter 7, but I want to give a little bit of context of what happens in John 6. So Jesus has just fed the 5,000 and walked on water. Now here's what happens in the text we're looking at today. It's John chapter 7 verses 1 through 13. I'm going to have that up on the screen, but I encourage you to also pull out your Bible and read along. It says, "After this, Jesus went about in Galilee. He would not go about in Judea because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now the Jews' feast of booths was at hand. So his brothers said to him, 'Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples may also see the works you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world.' For not even his brothers believed in him. Jesus said to them, 'My time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify about it that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I am not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come.' After saying this, he remained in Galilee. But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private. The Jews were looking for him at the feast and saying, 'Where is he?' And there was much muttering about him among the people. While some said, 'He is a good man,' others said, 'No, he is leading the people astray.' Yet for fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly of him." So here in this text, there is this opportunity with the Feast of the Booths for Jesus to make himself more visible, to show his works that he has been doing in front of people so that they might know who he is, the Messiah. And here in this text, his brothers are encouraging him to do so. His brothers are encouraging him to make this step into more of a public ministry. But as we see, Jesus here instead chooses to remain hidden and concealed. And he says, "Now my time has not yet fully come." Now is not the right time, he knows, to make himself known. I want to point out some key parts of Jesus' story here that I pray will bring about some self-reflection and also encourage us in knowing God's good timing in keeping us hidden and then in calling us to step out. The first thing I want to point out is that God doesn't tell Jesus to stay hidden in fear, but for his good purpose. John 7 verse 1 says, "After this, Jesus went about in Galilee. He would would not go about in Judea because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now, when you read this, it would be really easy to assume that Jesus was staying hidden in fear because he didn't want to be killed, but that's not what is happening here. A note from the Enduring Word commentary on this verse says, "It was not a lack of courage that made Jesus stay in Galilee, but an awareness of the Father's perfect timing. And it was not yet time for Jesus to be arrested and delivered to the Gentiles." Now, to really understand this, you have to remember that when it is time for Jesus to go to the cross, Jesus goes willingly. He says himself in John 10:18, "No one takes it from me," talking about his life, "but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father." So Jesus here is not acting in fear. He is not hiding in fear. When the time is right, Jesus is willing to pay the ultimate cost. He is willing to give up his life. He lays down his life for us. But rather, Jesus is remaining hidden because it was not yet his time. It was not yet the timing of God's purpose for this to happen. I think sometimes it is fear that keeps us from stepping out and fear that keeps us hidden. We're afraid to do something that we know God is calling us to do because we don't know what the outcome will be, or we're afraid of what people will think of us, or we don't feel qualified. I have an entire video talking about this and just speaking encouragement into this, of talking about, is God calling you to take a step of faith into the unknown, that I'll have linked above if you want to check it out. But know that God does not ask us to stay hidden in fear. And so if God is asking you to remain hidden right now, it is instead for a good purpose, to keep you in step with his perfect timing. The second thing I want to point out is that Jesus is okay with being hidden because he has no need to prove himself. John 7 verses 3-4 says, "So his brothers said to him, 'Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works that you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world.'" So Jesus' brothers believed that he needed to prove himself, that he needed to show that he was the Messiah, because as the next verse says, even they didn't believe in him. We talked about this more in the Bible Study With Me series through the book of Jude, but none of Jesus' brothers would actually come to believe in him until after his death and resurrection. A note from the Enduring Word commentary says, "His brothers were thinking that Jesus' success depended on the world's attitude toward him." So Jesus' brothers believed that Jesus' success depended on how people perceived Jesus, on what people thought of him. Sometimes we're tempted to believe that our success is dependent on what people think of us as well, and that's why we don't want to remain hidden. We feel like we need it to prove ourselves. But Jesus knew he didn't need to prove himself. He knew his success was not dependent on what people thought about him, but on obedience to God. He knew that if he was obeying God, then he was being successful in his mission, no matter what people thought and no matter the outcome. The fact that Jesus knew that he didn't need to prove himself is precisely why he could trust in God's perfect timing and remain private for this period of time. Sometimes when God keeps us hidden, he is using that period of being hidden to bring us to this place as well, to bring us to this place where our identity is securely rooted in him, where we care more about obeying him than we do about proving ourselves to people. And it is actually from this place that we're going to be most effective for him. Another note from the Enduring Word commentary says, "Because Jesus was completely submitted to the will of the Father, the timing of God the Father was important. The brothers of Jesus were not submitted to God's will in the same way, so any time was fine with them. As Jesus obeyed his Father, he lived out the truth that God's timing is an important expression of his will. Something may be in God's will, but not yet in his timing." When we're truly submitted to God and obedient to him, we're not going to want things to happen in any other timing than his timing, because we know that his is best. And if we're not in that place yet, let our prayer be, God, help our hearts to truly feel and believe this. The third thing I want to point out here is that when it was Jesus' time to step out, his mission would not be popular. In John 7:7, Jesus says to his brothers, "The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify about it that its works are evil." A note on this from the Enduring Word commentary, it says, Jesus' brothers agreed with the common opinions of their day about good and evil. Therefore, the world could not hate them. But Jesus boldly confronted the sins of his age and was therefore the target of much hatred. Sometimes we long so badly to be visible, to be known, to have purpose, but we may not realize that the mission that God calls us to may not make us popular. God may call us to do or to say unpopular things. If we step out too soon before God's timing for us, it is very likely that we'll only care about being liked and about agreeing with the opinions of the world. But God has called us to make him known. And that means that sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, the things we say, the things he will call us to say, will not be popular. God uses the hidden time of preparation to give us boldness and to give us conviction in his truth. So we care more about that. We care more about his truth and making that known and making him known than we do about being liked. So Jesus says, I'm not going to go with you to the feast because now is not my time. Now is not the time for me to be led to the cross, to be arrested. But then in John chapter 7, verse 10, it says, but after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private. So Jesus ends up going secretly to the feast instead. His brothers are encouraging him to make this grand public entrance. They wanted him to go publicly to attract attention, but instead Jesus goes privately. And at the feast, here's what happens. John 7:12 says, and there was much muttering about him among the people. While some said, he is a good man, others said, no, he is leading the people astray. So some people liked Jesus and some people didn't. A note on this from the Enduring Word commentary says, they complained because they wanted Jesus to fulfill their wishes for the Messiah and to fulfill them now when they wanted them. People had their different expectations of who they wanted Jesus to be, what they wanted Jesus to do, and the same is true of us. People are going to have different expectations of who they want you to be, different opinions of what they want you to do, but truly all that matters is what God is calling you to do and who God is calling you to be. Sometimes God keeps us hidden until the time is right to bring us to a place where this is what matters most to us too. If we step out too soon, we could just get lost in pandering to the crowd and pandering to what we are hearing from all these different people about what they want us to be, but God wants us to be rooted in who he has created us to be and in what he is calling us to do. I hope that was encouraging to you. I would love to hear from you down in the comments. What good purposes does God have in keeping you hidden right now? Or do you sense that God is telling you it's time to step out? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I'm going to be sharing mine as well. Thank you so much for being here in this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.